Good afternoon. It certainly is a pleasure for me to once again come into your home, come into your, wherever you are, to share with you the story of Berry Hill. My name is Leland Luck, and I'm the resident historian at the Berry Hill Resort and Conference Center. In earlier segments, we have discussed the old history of Berry Hill. Today we're going to talk about more recent history. In the earlier segment, we talked about James Cole Bruce and his wife Eliza, who built the mansion from scratch around 1844, moved in it in 1844. And the Bruces were the only occupants of the house. Someone out of the Bruce family occupied the old mansion from around 1844 to 1950. Malcolm Bruce was the last relative of the Bruce clan to occupy the old mansion as a dwelling. And in 1950, Malcolm sold the property to a Southfield businessman by the name of Frederick Watkins. Frederick Watkins had intended to live here, but Frederick Watkins was afraid of ghosts, so he didn't stay around very long. Didn't stay here all night. Stayed here about half night. He left here running of the night he moved in and has not been back since. He hired a fellow by the name of Richard Cecil Rogers to caretake the place for him. And Richard Cecil Rogers caretook the place for Frederick Watkins for about 25 years. But Frederick Watkins himself, even though he didn't live here, but he owned the property for about 40 years. He farmed the land, very productive farm, very productive farmer, and he did well farming the land at Berry Hill. And in 1988, Frederick Watkins sold the property for a very short period of time to a fellow that we don't hear much about. His name was Clayton Bryant. Clayton Bryant bought the property from Frederick Watkins primarily to sell the timber. So he sold the timber off the property around 1988. And then Clayton Bryant sold the property to a Washington, D.C. lawyer by the name of Howard Stalls. Howard Stalls bought the property from Clayton Bryant around 1988. And he too just used the property primarily, didn't do much with it, stabilized some of the buildings around, but he just used it, as I sometimes say, as a retreat for he and his friends from the DC area. And in 1997, Howard Stalls sold the property to AXA. That's AXA. That's not an acronym, that's the name of the property. AXA is a financial services company based in France. And they have these training centers in France, and they wanted one in North America. So a fellow from the Chapel Hill area by the name of Richard Jenrette talked to AXA into buying the Berry Hill property. And AXA bought the property from Howard Stalls in 1997. AXA invested $33 million into the Berry Hill property. They refurbished the old mansion, made other improvements around the place, and they built an inn at the rear of the property with 88 rooms. And AXA used it as a North American training center for their top executives from Europe. Each week, AXA would fly in 65 or 70 of their top executives from all over Europe. They would have a week of training, a week of intensive training. They would fly out and a new group would come in. And they did that for about 2 years until the attack on the World Trade Center. After 9/11, AXA folded their tent and got out of here as fast as they could. There was a couple of reasons for it. Business, I understand, took a downturn about that time. And also, they didn't know how the war on terror was going. They didn't have probably expected to have problems getting visas, getting people in and out of the country. So in AXA's opinion, it was a good time for them to get out of the North American business. And Axle sold the property that they had refurbished and invested $33 million in. They sold it to three guys from the DC area, Darren Phillips, Chris Russell, and Ryan Hill. And those three guys started operating the Berry Hill Plantation and Conference Center basically the way it is operated now. I don't know exactly how long they operated it, but they operated it for several years. Then those three guys sold the property to Founders College. Founders College was the brainchild of a Dr. Hull. Dr. Hull was a professor at Duke. He taught business ethics. And Dr. Hull was going to come in and start a small liberal arts college from the ground up right here on this campus. And Dr. Hull came in and started the college. They had 15 students and 9 professors. 7 other professors had earned PhDs. I don't know if the other 2 had it or not. They might have had them. I just never found out for a fact that they had the terminal degrees. And all the people who were involved in the college were very excited about the college succeeding. But the college did not succeed. It operated 2007 and 2008 with 15 students and 9 professors. At the end of 2008, the college went, I use the term sometimes, belly up. Probably it's not a good term to use, but the college failed. And the property wound up in the hands of a Dr. Charles Edwards. And the property is now owned by a private family from the Baltimore, Maryland area, the Dr. Charles Edwards family. And the Dr. Charles Edwards family has owned the property for a little more than 15 years. And they have operated it as a resort and conference center. And that kind of brings us from the 1950s when the Bruces sold it to Frederick Watkins on up until the present. So what we'll do the next time we get together, we will show you around the Berry Hill and share some other interesting stories about the Berry Hill Resort and Conference Center. Good afternoon.